people for a lot less cost.
Okay, now, how I know that there's been some problems with some of the what did they call those things? Michelle was working down those on Tucson.
Oh,
The little portable houses
The
that they
Dream
had.
Pod.
Say that again.
They call them Dream Pods.
Right, the
Dream
Dream
Pods.
Pods.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so there was a lot of problems with that because of the fact that the Dream Pods ended up being on public land or whatnot. So when you're talking about the tiny homes, how do you get around that? Is that something that's going to be on private land, like from donors and stuff like that, or how does that work?
So we have several locations which we're looking at right now, and we plan on doing it on private property and following all the existing codes. So part of the issue is Phoenix and Tucson and most of Arizona still uses the International Building Codes from 2012, which doesn't have tiny homes as part of the codes, versus the newer one, which is 2015. They actually include building codes for tiny homes. So one of the things we might be pushing for in the future is to get them to update their codes to this 2015 edition versus the existing 2012 edition.
Okay, and then so exactly what how does, say, somebody's homeless or whatnot? How do they get involved in trying to be able to get placed into a tiny home?
Well, so what we want to do is we want to remove a lot of the barriers to housing. So we want to do a model called Housing First. And what that means is a lot of the requirements that some of these government-operated places put into place wouldn't be there. So, for example, some of them might require up to 90 days of proven sobriety. Well, that's kind of hard to prove. If you were someone who has a history of drug addiction, they're not necessarily just going to take your word for it. They're going to make you do drug tests or go to counseling or do these other things that you may not have the money for, or that the state might not want to pay for, or you may not know how to access those resources. So that's the barrier to housing. Another big issue is what's called crime-free housing. So a lot of individuals that are houseless or homeless, they end up committing criminal acts. And what that does is that prevents them from getting housing for many, many years. In some cases, it's just as little as 2 years since your last criminal attempt. But a lot of these places now are going all the way back, and they're saying up to 99 years. If you have a felony, we're not going to allow you to live on our premises. And Build Us Hope wants to get rid of that barrier. We want to say, we understand you did what you did, but you need assistance now, and that's what we're here for.
Now, in this process, I mean, what kind of assistance are you guys getting for this project? Is it all private donations? Are we getting any help from grants, government, anything like that?
Honestly, we want to keep it mostly private donations as much as possible, because once you start getting into the realm of government funding, they start putting all these strings on there and saying, well, you got to do all these mandated reports. Well, the problem with that is, I mean, it's good information to have, don't get me wrong, but it takes a lot of time to put together those reports. So we're taking away staff time where we could be providing services, support services to individuals, and we're putting it into paperwork. Or we have to take away from services because we have to hire a full-time staff member to do nothing but extrapolate data and numbers and information. So we are going to seek a little bit of government funding, but we want our primary funding source to be private as much as possible.
Now, are you guys getting any kind of hassle from, for example, I know that Phoenix has the urban camping laws and this, that, and the other. I mean, are they trying to work with you to actually come up with solutions? Or, I mean, is there flack there? I mean, how is that working out?
Well, we're still in the building and conceptual phase, and Phoenix has been pretty decent to us. Like I said, the biggest issue is they still have old building codes, so they're not quite sure what to do with the idea of a tiny home. They're not sure how to treat it. Do you treat it as an RV? Do you treat it as a mobile home? Are you showcasing a regular house? So we're trying to work with the city to figure out exactly how we would codify a tiny home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it doesn't really fit your normal architectural standard for like a dwelling. So I can understand how that can be kind of conflictive. So how far have you guys progressed with this project?
Well, we've partnered with Greenlight Solutions. They're out of ASU, and we're going to create sustainable community living environments. So we want to have community gardens. We want to have aquaponics. We want to do gray water systems. We want to do solar. So we want to do all these technologies that allow us to be sustainable, because most affordable housing units now, they have to go to the government every single year to get their money, or they can't sustain themselves. We're trying to create an environment which we need to go to outside funding as little as possible once it's actually in place.
Now, are you guys getting a lot of? Are you getting any like private donations from like building companies, or like Home Depot, Lowe's, stuff like that, to actually help design and actually figure out how to build these things efficiently?
So right now, like I said, right now we're still in the design phase. We're still designing the actual buildings. So we haven't really done a lot of outreach for products that we're going to need for the construction phase yet. That's going to be coming soon. So we're going to be needing things. So right now, basically, if people are interested in helping out, I know we nonprofits say it over and over and over again, but what's most helpful to us is either cash donations, or we could also take land, because we can use that as collateral to get the program going.
Okay, and now, do you guys have like a specific website or anything like that that people can actually go research and then either contribute land, money, whatever, to your cause?
Yeah, they can go to buildushope.com or buildushope.org. They both link back to the same page. And there's a thing on there. We have different scales of donations, get different benefits. So, for example, if you donate $30,000, which is what we estimate the house is going to cost, we'll just name the house after you. That's going to be the benefit.
Wow, so we could have a Cara house if we donated $30,000.
Yeah,
a Cara house. Would it be mean and cranky, or just
Let's just be downright.
we're going to put a red light on the outside.
Now,
sorry, I have to keep it professional.
Totally cool.
So okay. So you guys, once you guys get past the actual design and concept stage, okay, and you get enough donations to where you start building these houses, how do you guys figure out exactly who's? I mean, is it first come first serve? Do you have like some sort of a tier type thing, so that people that are more at risk for, say, violence on the streets being allowed in first? I mean, how does that work?
So top priority is going to go to the chronically homeless, so those individuals that have experienced homelessness for over a year. We're going to, of course, our vets are going to get top priority. Then those with the mental illness are also going to get top priority, and those that are fleeing domestic violence situations.
So are you working with some of the domestic violence organizations in the area to figure out exactly who those people are and how to need for them?
Well, one of the biggest things is we want to make sure as there's anonymity. So we want to do what's called scattered sites. So a lot of the affordable housing now, they pick a plot and they get a really big piece of land and they build apartment style on there. And that's just kind of how they do it. We want to build basically what we call a master plan community. So the porches face each other so that you get to know your neighbor. And like I said, we're going to have the garden, the barbecue. Each housing unit is going to have its own bathroom inside and its own little kitchenette. So they're going to feel they're in a home. And that's one of the main things we heard is we don't want to have like a community bathroom where we have to go. Then that doesn't feel like home. So we wanted to make sure that when they came into our units, it felt like home. So they felt safe and comfortable.
Now, one of the things is from working and where we do downtown and everything, or close to downtown, there's a lot of old, abandoned apartment buildings and stuff like that. Have you guys considered actually working to try to renovate some of those that are already established?
We looked at rehabs, but here's the problem with rehabilitations. It doesn't create new units. And it doesn't necessarily create affordable units because it costs a lot of money to rehabilitate those apartments. So what we're looking to do is to create actual new units so it increases the number of available units to the marketplace. Because anybody can go and rehab one of those apartments and put people in there, but the number of units that are available stays the same pretty much versus new construction. It's helping create jobs, but it's also creating the availability for people to have a place to go that's brand new, it's fresh, there's new paint on the walls, there's fresh piping, there's no asbestos in the ceiling or any other health and safety concerns you might have, because these older buildings aren't necessarily up to the 2012 code.
Right.
So that's why we wanted to look at new construction versus rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because especially when you're talking about with like asbestos and stuff like that, it does the cost for rehabilitation of those properties to make them, refurbishment to livable standards of now is really, really difficult and very not cost effective. Now, we know that there's a huge homeless problem in Arizona because every day we see people on the street corners and wandering around, shopping carts and carrying what little possessions they have with them everywhere. Does it seem like the state is actually trying to downplay the amount of homeless we have in our state? Or is it just something that you perceive when you're driving around? It's just hard to tell sometimes.
So Arizona does what's called a point-in-time count, and what that means is they pay people, or there's volunteers, that will go around and they will talk to the individuals that are houseless or homeless, and they will take a tally their information and put it together, and then they put in, DES does a report every single year that they put out that you can look up online. And according to them, the numbers are going down every single year, but those of us who actually work out in the field are going, well, how is that possible? We're seeing more and more people. The shelters are full even though you continue to build more and more shelters and more units. There's more and more people on the streets. So one of the goals, of course, is to eradicate homelessness, or at least to reduce it as much as possible. So there's an incentive when they do these point-in-time counts to make those numbers go down, because then the state goes, oh, we can give you additional funding because you're actually doing what your program was designed for, and we're okay with that. So there's an incentive that's called a perverse incentive to a lot of my libertarian friends. I'm sure they know that term. There's a perverse incentive to make sure those numbers go down.
But do you think that it's actually going to make a difference?
The only way to actually make a difference is to put money back in the Housing Trust Fund. So the state needs to quit holding on to all this land that it's got, and it needs to sell it off. And that would also put more money into education. That's where some of that Prop 123 money is supposed to magically come from, is the state land trust.
Right.
But it would also put money into housing. So if we could reestablish the Housing Trust Fund, we'd be able to build more units and we could house more people. And I don't ever believe we'll eradicate homelessness, but we can definitely at least reduce it.
Right. Yeah, because we've seen, even out here in our neck of the woods, we've seen kind of an increase in homelessness out here. 10 years ago, you didn't see much in the way of homelessness out here in Apache Junction, but now, you see it all the time. You see people on street corners. Now, one of the things that, or one of the, I guess, the negatives that people always try to bring up is the fact that they say, well, all these people that you see standing on street corners, they're all just trying to scam you. They're not really homeless. And there are cases of that. I mean, I think everybody can admit that there are cases where people will actually try to game the system. But, I mean, is it really that prevalent in Arizona? We have people that are really trying that hard to game the